Episode 6, Childhood Friend.
Vlad was standing above me with a knife in his hand. His face was grim and distant.
Our time. Romania. The castle.
I tried to scream, but my voice failed me, and I just moaned quietly. Ah. The castle owner looked at me as if he just saw me and swung the knife down sharply the next moment. The blade cut precisely through the vein on my chest and then my wrists. I managed to sit up and took to untangling the stems with shaky fingers. Vlad was watching me with a heavy, sorrowful gaze from under his eyebrows.
Laya, I'm sorry.
Sorry? You dragged me here while I was asleep, bound me and...
I didn't do it. I just wanted to free you.
But then who? There are only you and my friends in the castle now. Another heavy gaze and no answer. The butler, who was still hanging with his head down, moaned complainingly. Vlad turned around, clearly annoyed. He approached Anton, took him off the hook, threw him over his shoulder, and carried to the hallway. Then he slammed the door shut and returned to me. Poor Anton. You abandoned him in the hall without even untying him.
Anton can wait. Now I need to speak to you privately.
About what? Are you going to tell me you didn't tie him either?
Yes, I am.
By that time, I managed to untangle almost all the stems, but several of them bound my ankle and wouldn't budge. I jerked my leg to tear them apart, but the knot only got tighter. The vine cut into my skin painfully. I felt tears of pain, despair, and fear welling up. What do you want from me? Who are you? Vlad leaned close to me and cut through the vine carefully. There were deep, dark lines in my leg. He looked at them, then at me. For a moment, his eyes mirrored my pain and confusion. His fingers reached for the bruises on my skin and caressed them delicately, barely touching me. I'll watch him. I bated my breath involuntarily, looking at Vlad with surprise. His fingers slid down my ankle again.
I know you really want to leave now, but...
Suddenly, he took my shoulders and squeezed them delicately, but firmly.
I can't let you go. What happened today won't happen again. The castle is the safest place for you right now.
His face got pale, highlighting black shadows under his eyes. He froze, staring in one spot and inhaling slowly. He's so weird, closed off, tense. He doesn't explain anything. But why do I feel like he's being sincere?
Your relationship with Vlad is good.
I thought of that, and immediately got frightened of my desire to believe the one who was looming over me with a knife in his hands minutes ago. I tried to wrestle myself free, but it didn't convince anyone. Vlad spoke quietly, forcing the words out.
Please, stop.
All right. He clenched his teeth so hard I heard them grit. He traced my shoulders with his hands slowly. His palms were cold, but his touch felt hot. I felt the strength of his hands, but something else within him was even more powerful. It lured me, holding tighter than any shackles and binds. I don't know who you are, but I don't want you to let me go. Vlad seemed to read this thought in my mind. His fiercely alive eyes glistened on the face, tortured with tension. He pulled me in so close that I didn't even have space to take a breath, lifted my chin, and kissed me. His cool lips touched mine, but the moment I opened my mouth, he pulled back. Ah? Vlad inhaled sharply, looking me in the eyes as if he was reading my emotions and feelings through them. Another sharp, demanding touch of his lips, and another pull back. And again. Deceiving, shallow kisses on my lips, and deep gazes with glistening eyes turning my soul inside out. I was still sitting on the table and he stood next to it, pressing me against his frame. The shadows of the candles were dancing on the stone walls, and the roses were intoxicating us with their smell. My head was spinning because of his proximity and smell, and the fast, short touches of his lips felt like torture. When Vlad approached me again, I captured his face in my palms, unwilling to let go. He moved his head, trying to break free, but froze immediately, and I kissed him greedily, sweetly, deeply. I wanted to push through his coldness and find out what he was hiding behind his icy demeanor. He didn't answer my kiss at once, but when he did, his lips got more and more ravenous. His hands slid across my face, hair, neck, and I almost got lost in the caresses of his lips and tongue.
Your relationship with Vlad has improved.
Suddenly, everything stopped. He moved me away sharply, almost pushing me, and took a step back. It was so unexpected and rude that I almost choked with offense. He felt the air around until he finally found a wall, as though he went blind. Breathing heavily, Vlad leaned on it, lowered his head, and closed his eyes. Now his face was not just pale, it was colorless. Blood streamed from his nose in a thin line. Vlad? I rushed towards him trying to touch him, but he evaded my hands. I heard someone's voices, the door flew open, and Sandra and Leo ran into the chamber.
Anton's lying there, tied up. What's going on here?
I couldn't utter anything sensible because of an emotional whirlwind inside me. Someone tied me and Anton, and then Vlad and the knife. I thought it was him, and his blood, and...
Wait, what? Someone tied you?
Yes, while I was asleep, and carried me here from my room. A perplexed Sandra looked at Leo, then at Vlad, then at me.
But who? The servants don't sleep in the castle. And Leo, Vlad, and I were in the library the whole time.
Vlad was with you? Really?
Yes, we were talking about what happened in Brasov. We only went to our rooms like 20 minutes ago.
That's when I woke up. Vlad walked over to a chair slowly, sat down, and looked at us. His breath was almost back to normal, and color started to get back to his face. Are you feeling better? I'm so glad. And you didn't tie me. I'm glad about that even more. Vlad smiled crookedly, and looked at me more softly and warmly than usual.
But someone abducted her right in front of our faces, which means you and we both screwed up.
Leo's voice betrayed anger beginning to boil.
Maybe you know what's going on in this damned castle. Who could have done it?
Vlad closed his eyes for a moment, then shook his head.
I didn't see anything.
Anton, what if he saw something?
Leo brought the butler back into the chamber and untied him, asking questions, but Anton seemed to not hear him. He looked deranged. His eyes kept wandering off. He shook nervously, giggling.
He's not quite himself.
The butler stared into the distance, waved his hand, and screamed out like a herald.
Darul pentru rege. Rege!
He put emphasis on the last word. Vlad's expression changed. Frightened, I leaned to Sandra and whispered, "What did he say?"
It translates as the gift to the king. Rege means king.
Vlad inhaled deeply, then turned to us, trying to sound calm.
Laya, Sandra, it's late. Go to sleep. Leo, could you see them to their rooms and then get back and help me here?
He nodded at Anton. Leo squinted coldly.
I will, and we'll have a talk.
But...
Please go.
Leo and I took Sandra to her room, and then Leo walked me to mine. We said goodnight to each other, and he turned to leave but stopped suddenly, remembering something.
The word Anton screamed now. Rege. We've heard it here before.
When? I don't remember.
Last night in my room, remember the voices chanting something? I didn't understand it back then, but now I'm sure it was the word rege.
I slept anxiously. The deep sleep only came by the morning, so I woke up later than usual. The moment I walked out of the castle, I shivered from cold. The temperature had dropped noticeably since the previous day. It seemed that the fog from the mountains had crawled to the yard, and everything around was engulfed in a cold veil. I've heard it could happen in mountains, but so quickly? The inner yard was foggy as well, and the flowers in the flower bed lowered their heads. The atmosphere seemed cheerless.
Get down, you little beast.
Leo was standing by the terrace edge, looking up. There was his cat, sitting on a wooden penthouse and smirking mischievously. Disobedient much?
Hi, Laya. Yeah, you can see that.
Leo moved the chairs for us and we sat down. I looked at the sky. It was dark gray, and a huge black cloud was hanging right above the castle. Even though it was windy, the cloud didn't move. There still were no birds above the castle. Such a strange cloud.
Indeed. It's like an eye looking from above. By the way, it was raining at night.
So Vlad was right about the superstition yesterday. He said if there were no birds in the sky, it meant rain. But it's strange they still haven't returned. I guess it's because of the fog. Leo, what happened yesterday after we left? He answered reluctantly.
Nothing, really. We didn't find any traces of the abductors, but we had to deal with Anton.
How's he doing? Has he recovered?
Nah, he's still the same. Vlad took him to a nearby hospital in the morning. Something was a big shock to our butler yesterday. Maybe he got scared or someone poisoned him.
I shivered.
I keep thinking, why did they treat you so differently? He was tied up and hung crudely, like a piece of meat. But you were placed on the table carefully, like some masterpiece.
I can't even begin to imagine who would need do to it and why. Carrying people from one room to another, tying them up and leaving them be, it looks like an idiotic joke. Nosferatu finally was kind enough to get down and jump on his master's knees.
I don't get it. He's a noble-blooded cat with the habits of a stray. If I'd let him, he'd wander the streets all day long.
Leo wanted to frown, but instead smiled, unable to hide his love for his pet. By the way, did you ever find out where he went in the hotel?
Well, I've got a guess. The hotel employees told me there was a black cat coming to my balcony those days.
So Nosferatu was visited by a girlfriend? Do you think they went for walks together?
No girlfriends. He's a pure-blooded Canadian Sphinx with a unique pedigree. He cannot mess with a mongrel.
Why does a Canadian Sphinx family live in Romania? And how did Nosferatu ended up in the States?
It's a long story.
Tell me.
When the first Sphinx cats appeared in Canada in the 60s, several kittens were bought by the family of a Romanian prince. They valued and collected rare cat breeds. As a result, a separate line of Romanian Sphinxes started here. The princes made sure the bloodline stayed pure, and people keep doing it now. And Nosferatu. My neighbor decided to give an exotic gift to his girlfriend. He brought the kitten to the States. And then they broke up, and the poor baby ended up on the street. He was roaming our backyard until I took him home.
Poor thing. Thank God he ended up in your loving hands. A notification sounded in Leo's pocket.
Aha, it's time for Nosferatu to take his vitamins. Can you watch him while I get the pills? He'll be upset if I take him to the house now.
Yes, sure.
Thanks, you're a lifesaver. I'll be quick.
Leo's thankful to you.
He put the cat on my knees. I pet Nosferatu on his head lightly, and he purred happily.
You started your friendship with the cat.
His skin feels so nice. It's like velvet.
If he climbs up again, it's okay. Just don't lose sight of him.
Leo hurried to the castle, and the cat soon jumped off my knees and started washing himself. A guy I'd seen in the castle before walked out to me from the kitchen. He spoke with hard accent.
My name is Valentine. Anton is sick. I serve you for now. We have fresh coffee. Drink?
Thank you, Valentine. With cream, please. He brought me a tray with the necessities and left. I poured coffee into the cup and was about to add cream when a black cat jumped from the penthouse on the table. She tipped the coffee pot over and ran into the bushes. Nosferatu meowed loudly and chased her. No, come back. I ran past the bushes, saw them rushing through the garden path, and followed. Nosferatu, I promised Leo. The path ended soon, and the cat jumped across the grass, leading me into the deserted part of the island. Finally, the black cat jumped on the head of some statue, and Nosferatu froze by its feet. I stopped and caught my breath. What is this place? I was surrounded by crooked feral plants, statues, and graves. It's a cemetery. The cemetery was located right by the castle's wall, small and apparently very old. It was even colder there than by the castle, and I hugged myself, trying to contain the shivers. Funny. Great job, Laya. Chasing cats and ending up among graves. I began looking around, curious. The gravestones got tilted over time, and the inscriptions were unreadable. But one grave was different from the others. It was clearly looked after. Someone planted beautiful flowers around it, and a small icon lamp was burning next to it. I squatted and tried to make out the letters on the stone. The first one is clearly an E, then there's an L. I can't make out the rest, but there seems to be an A in the end. Looks like a name. Nosferatu called out to the cat, but she looked down from the statue and turned away proudly. Could it be the cat who visited him in the hotel? But as I thought of the distance between Bucharest and the castle, I discarded the thought. There are tons of black cats. Sorry, Nosferatu, but we'll have to go back. It's the wrong weather for walking in cemeteries. I reached out for him and saw a silhouette out of the corner of my eye. There was someone standing right behind me. I shivered and almost gasped, straightening up and turning around. What I saw surprised me more than if I had seen a ghost. The dandy-looking man seemed as though he was coming back from a diplomatic reception. The suit, his posture, a thin veil of expensive perfume. His hair was set with perfect nonchalance. The only thing that wasn't fitting in his perfection were his eyes, which were of different colors. One of them was dark, and the other was light green.
Laya, that must be you. Interesting.
He studied me with a good-natured yet estimating and slightly pixie-ish look. Do you know me?
I've heard of you. The name's Noe Lockheed.
He offered me his hand, and I answered his gesture hesitantly. Instead of shaking it, he took my palm and kissed it without breaking eye contact. Who are you? He let go of my hand after a while and smiled.
I'm an old acquaintance of Vlad. Basically, a childhood friend.
Are you from Switzerland?
Yes, I'm on a business trip in Romania now, and I suddenly found out Vlad was here as well, so I couldn't skip paying him a visit. Besides, we need to settle some matters.
He pointed to the castle wall, and I saw an old, rusty gate in the bushes, leading outside.
I've just got here. The driver said he knew a good road, but he took me to the backside of the castle.
So you entered here? He gave a ringing laugh.
I did. It seems it hasn't been used for 100 years. Then bam, there's me climbing through the bushes.
Wearing patent leather shoes. He looked at his elegant shoes and laughed again. His laughter was very pleasant, and apparently he knew it.
Well, can you take me to the castle?
Nosferatu appeared between us all of a sudden, arched his back and hissed angrily at my new acquaintance. The man stumbled back, frightened, and hit the icon lamp with his foot. It fell over, and Noah's trouser leg caught on fire.
Gah!
His face twisted. He roared angrily. His melodic voice was suddenly gone. Noah waved his hand on the flames, and it magically disappeared. There was no trace of burning at his trouser leg. It all happened so fast I wasn't quite sure I saw and understood it right. Did he really wave the flame away? Or it never hit the cloth, and I just misinterpreted it? Noah mumbled several words in a language I didn't know, and the corner of his mouth twitched in a strange manner. But he immediately pulled on his nonchalant expression back and smiled like nothing ever happened.
What a cute cat. Is it yours?
No.
Well, shall we?
I picked the cat up, and Noe and I walked to the castle. So you knew Vlad as a kid?
Your relationship with Vlad has improved.
Well, more as a teenager. We met at the school theater. We acted there.
Vlad used to be an actor?
Hard to believe it, right? But still.
Was he good?
Well, he didn't really enjoy it and thought he wasn't cut out for it. But I'd say he was great.
We came up to the terrace. Vlad and Leo stood there talking about something.
Laya, Nosferatu, there you are.
The cat jumped off my arms and ran to his master.
You?
Vlad was looking at Noe with astonishment, and it wasn't a joyful surprise. But Noe seemed to ignore it, opening his arms to his old friend.
Vlad, there you are. You found yourself quite a remote place.
The castle master's face froze with tension, but he let Noe hug him and even hugged him back slightly.
How did you end up here?
Good morning.
Hi, everyone.
As soon as Noe spotted the girls, he approached them and introduced himself.
Sandra, your eyes are incredible. And you, Millie, are as charming as youth itself.
He bowed, motioned his hand in the air intricately, and suddenly, he was holding 3 black lilies. Millie clapped, and Noe gave a flower to each of us. Black lily, accept.
What a wonderful trick. Laya, your favorite lilies. I've never seen black ones before.
Damn it. Lilies again. Please, get them away.
Nosferatu wanted to hiss, but just sneezed a couple times again and scratched himself desperately. It seemed to me that a vengeful fire flickered in Noe's eyes. The flowers were put in a vase away from the table, and Valentine served breakfast for us. Noe sat between Sandra and Millie and took to chatting with them, being oh so charming, and complimenting them non-stop. It seemed as if he forgot about the old friend he came to visit. His gaze shifted between the girls, sometimes landing on me, and his eyes got more and more shiny. Leo was watching it with disdainful confusion, and Vlad's face looked like a stone mask.
So you came here for a vacation. Wonderful. Who's that on your shirt, Millie?
It's Victor, my favorite character from a game. He's a vampire.
Noe choked on his coffee and laughed again.
So you're a fan of vampires? Fascinating.
He squinted mischievously and looked around the castle.
You must be glad you ended up in a place like this. It would be perfect for a vampire story.
Millie shook her head uncertainly.
So what's so attractive about blood-sucking monsters to you?
They're romantic, mysterious, strong. And not everyone drinks blood.
Yeah. For some reason, people like to romanticize evil until they face it.
Noe leaned back in his chair with a content grin.
You know, Vlad, I'd stay here for a couple days. Can you find a room for an old friend?
If eyes could kill, Vlad would probably have done it. He got up from the table.
Let's go and talk in my office.
Noe smiled to each of us and followed Vlad reluctantly. After the breakfast, Leo and Millie stayed on the terrace to play with the cat, and Sandra and I went to the pound with the deer. After the last night's rain, the ground before the pound was still wet, and we had to tread carefully to avoid stepping in dirt.
How are you feeling, darlings?
The babies were lively and jumped around us, but the mother deer was lying with her eyes half closed. My bandage slid down, the wound was open, and it looked bad. I don't like this at all. She didn't heal, she got worse.
I guess that's because the bandage fell off.
We cleaned the wound again and applied a new bandage. I petted the deer on her head. If she doesn't get better, we'll call a vet. We stayed in the pound for a little while, watching the babies play, and were about to leave. But Sandra suddenly walked over to the fence, squatted, and took to examining the sludge.
Are there kids in the castle?
I don't think so. I joined her and saw a chain of tiny barefoot footsteps in the drying mud by the fence.
It's clearly a child's foot, and the traces were left. I think today, early in the morning.
Maybe some servant came to work with a child, and of course they wanted to see the deer.
Yeah, probably.
I returned to my room and took to working on the paintings. Something's happening here all the time, and I can't work. I need to work hard today, or I won't make it to the deadline. I worked hard for several hours and cleaned up almost all the central part of the canvas. Of course, I recognized the portrait.
(1444), the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan's palace in Edirne.
Lael was looking at the door in tense expectation. The lesson was about to start, but there were fewer students in the class than usual.
Why aren't Aslan and Vlad here?
She began listing the names of other absentees in her mind, and suddenly realized they all were captive young men. Teacher Mustafa appeared in the classroom and was almost knocked down by the fragile girl.
Lal Khatun, where are you going?
Lael was circling around nervously, waiting for Ali Bey to finish his conversation with two soldiers. Finally, he walked over to her.
Good morning, my lady. How may I be of help?
Where are they? The foreign boys? None of them came to the lesson.
Ali Bey frowned, looked about, and said,
They're locked in. I have an order not to let anyone out before we leave in the evening, or they'll try to escape.
What? Are you leaving tonight?
Yes. Sultan Mehmed ordered to prepare the departure to the new school as rapidly as possible.
Lael's heart sank. She squeezed her eyes shut and shook her head, as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. But the reality stayed the same.
But what about saying goodbye to their friends?
It's prohibited.
He frowned again, but his eyes was sympathetic.
I guess I could convince him. Should I ask an honest warrior to disobey the order? Ali Bey, please. Let me see Vlad and Aslan.
He bumped his fists into each other and sighed heavily.
I'll need help at the stables at noon. I'll take them with me. Wait in the shed.
Lael was sitting on a hay bale and picking at culms nervously. Finally, the door screeched, and Aslan walked in, followed by Vlad. She moved, and Aslan sat next to her. Vlad remained standing by the door.
Hey, how are you?
Aslan was smiling as always, but there was sadness in his eyes, so unusual for his face that Lael felt a pang of pain.
Why are you smiling? Can you not smile, for now at least?
Her sadness poured into vexation, almost anger. Aslan shrugged.
I can't. You're right here.
Well, he can just fine.
Lael motioned to Vlad. His face looked as it would normally look in public, slightly pale, closed off, inanimate.
Why are you silent? If you came here to stand still, just leave now. I don't want to look at that empty shell. You're not here.
We really came in vain, Aslan. The goodbyes don't help. They make it worse. Lael doesn't need it.
Then what helps? Pretending to be dead? If you do it well and for long enough, you can really turn into a stone.
Vlad approached the window and looked at the sky.
Soon you'll forget it all. You have a long, happy life ahead of you.
What about you? Will you forget it as well?
Vlad, don't be like that. No one will forget anything. All our adventures, jokes, conversations, no one can take them from us. They'll be here forever, through time and distance. By the way, we've got a very important task for you. Promise me you'll do it.
I promise. What is it?
To keep this girl safe and happy.
He lightly bumped her nose with his finger.
Pamper her as hard as you can, so she'd never have time to sulk. Soon it's going to be fine.
Your relationship with Aslan has improved.
Vlad turned around with his teeth clenched.
Do you think you'll make it easier for you with your tales? Or are you trying to console yourself?
A scratching sound came from the outer wall of the shed, a sign to say goodbye. Aslan took Lael's palms in his and squeezed them lightly.
Aslan.
Lael threw herself to his neck and gave him a tight hug. He caressed her hair, slowly inhaling the smell, as if trying to remember it. Then she came up to Vlad, who had turned to the window again. She hugged him from behind, linking her hands at his waist.
Vlad, I won't forget you.
Suddenly, she felt his cold fingers touching her wrist, shaking lightly.
Your relationship with Vlad has improved.
But in a moment, Vlad released himself from her arms and walked out hastily without looking at her.
Don't believe his words. Remember, it's more painful for him than for us. He's lost his family just recently, and now again.
He looked at Lale again closely, smiled, and walked out after his friend. Lael has been sitting in the yard of the abandoned house for the last half an hour. It was the only place she could cry to her heart's relief.
What's the point of our success in the science contest if there are no more friends to study with me?
Guzelik put her forepaws on her knees and tried her best to console her master by licking her face. Lael hugged the hound.
Thank you, darling. It's less sad with you here, but still.
She cried again. But sooner or later, every stream dries up, and so did Lael's tears. She was sitting there quiet and tired.
Good evening, Lale Hatun. So nice to see you here.
Saifi entered the yard with a smile on her face, but as soon as she saw Lael's face, she gasped.
Were you crying? Did something happen?
The first order of new Sultan Mehmed. Have you heard about it?
Saifi nodded solemnly.
So it will be put into action tonight.
The path of luck.
Lael cried all her tears out and felt she was coming to terms with the thought of her friends leaving. She leaned against the wall quietly and closed her eyes.
And I can't do anything. Mehmed's got unlimited power. And it's just his first order. I'm afraid it's all going to be worse from now on.
Saifi looked at her with sympathy, thought for a while, and said,
They don't really talk about it, but actually, his power is not unlimited.
What do you mean?
As Sultan Murad was leaving the throne, he knew Mehmed wasn't ready to rule at all. so he set it up the way that not a single Mehmed's order can come into effect without being approved by the Grand Vizier.
Khalil Pasha, your father.
Lael almost screamed it out and pressed her hand against her mouth immediately.
Yes, and it's going to be this way until Mehmed turns 16, for 2 more years. Mehmed is not a real sultan. He's like a boy sitting on a wooden stick and thinks he's riding a horse. My father is ruling the empire now, and I know he hasn't signed the school order yet.
Do you think he can decline it?
Her heart fluttered happily.
There must be some solid reasons, and I don't think he'd just...
Lael wrung her hands desperately.
If he signs it, tonight, my friends will be sent far away into another school.
Suddenly, Saifi took her hand.
Look, Lala Khatun, remember I said that if I'd ever have a chance to thank you, I'd do it gratefully? My father is very busy today. He won't accept visitors. But I think he'll make an exception for me. I'll ask him to see you. Explain the importance of the school to him. I don't really know much about it, so I can't be persuasive. But you're smart and eloquent. What if you manage to?
Lael had been standing before the vizier for a couple minutes now, but he was writing something as if he didn't notice her. Finally, he put the quill aside and raised his head.
I don't have much time, Lala Hatun, but Saifi begged me to hear you.
I'll start with a short greeting. He said he didn't have much time, but there's no way I'd skip the greeting altogether.
Lael bowed respectfully.
Hello, and thank you, Khalil Pasha.
The vizier nodded graciously.
You chose the right greeting.
So what did you want to talk about, Lale Hatun?
The first order of the new sultan, sir. I beg you to cancel it.
The vizier's brows rose in surprise.
Why?
Because the palace school is a very important project of Sultan Murad. It's a brilliant idea, ahead of his time, for everyone, Ottomans and foreigners, girls and boys, to study together. You can't transfer the captives to another school. It undermines the gist of the school of Murad II.
I've heard about the results of the science contest. They're impressive. It speaks in favor of Hojam Mustafa's system.
The success at the contest will influence the vizier's decision.
I also know how much your uncle respects and values you.
You are respected at the palace.
So I'll agree with you and decline the first order of the young sultan. One more thing. We've been talking for a while to let other girls attend the school. I guess it's time if you want to recommend someone.
Lael couldn't believe her ears.
Yes, I know a wonderful girl who really wants to study. But she's a captive from the harem.
The Grand Vizier frowned and walked across the room, thinking hard.
There are captive young men studying in your school, right? Why can't there be a captive girl? We'll let her attend the school.
Layli almost gasped with happiness, but the thought of her friends made her collect her wits.
Khalil Pasha, you need to announce the decline of the order, or the captive boys will be taken away tonight.
The vizier looked at her in surprise.
What? They can't do that without my signature.
They locked them in and kept them like that all day long. Everything is prepared for the departure, as Sultan Mehmed has ordered.
The eyes of the Grand Vizier glistened with fire. He couldn't help but hiss.
This boy. Don't worry, I'll send an assistant right away. The order will be declined.
Lael bowed gratefully.
And as for Sultan Mehmed, since he hates the school as it is so much, I think we'll transfer him to separate studying.
The vizier turned to the wall and mumbled.
Maybe it'll get some sense into him.
Our time. The castle.
I returned. My first thought was, at least I'm in my room. It was almost 6 p.m. according to the clock. I had started cleaning the instruments, the table, when someone knocked on the door. There was Vlad with a large, pretty box in his hands.
Are you still working?
I've just finished. Want to see the progress?
Later. We're leaving now.
To where?
too, Gradish, the man who bought the other paintings. He agreed to see us.
Vlad handed the box to me.
There's going to be pink tea there. The ladies' dress code is silver color, so I ordered something for you. Choose what's to your liking.
He exited the room and I opened the box. I noticed Vlad looking at me attentively. What's the matter?
You look beautiful.
Before leaving, Vlad and I went into the garden gazebo to say goodbye to our friends. Even though the evening was just beginning, it was already dark. The cloud didn't go anywhere and was hanging there, as if it was glued onto the sky. Sandra and Millie were sitting in the porch swing. Noe was standing behind them. Looking into the book Millie was reading aloud.
In the beginning of the 15th century, all of Europe was sending witches, warlocks, and other people suspected of connections with the dark forces to the Carpathians. It was claimed that the Carpathians became the harbor of various creatures of the lower world. First, because of the deeds of the above-mentioned witches, and also because of the remoteness and underpopulation of this mountain terrain, which made it a perfect hideaway for creatures stuck between the worlds.
Millie, what are you reading? It sounds exciting.
Yes, very.
Millie closed the book, beamed, and showed me the cover dark and cracked with time.
Your relationship with your sister has improved.
Encyclopedia of Carpathian Evil Spirits. It was published in 1897.
Where did you get it?
It's Noe's.
Her cheeks blushed a bit, and she looked at him with gratitude. Noe laughed.
Oh, I just happened to come across this peculiar book. I kept dragging it around in my suitcase and didn't know where to place it. And it turned out Millie was interested.
He gave it to me.
But hasn't Noe come here without his bags?
I got them delivered here a couple hours ago. Since Vlad offered me to stay, I wouldn't be able to go on without my stuff.
Vlad and Noe exchanged glances sharp as blades.
Don't take this book seriously, Millie. It's a collection of fantasies. They're funny but not connected to reality whatsoever. They were very popular at the end of the 19th century, but as unreliable as modern magazines like Supernatural Daily.
We told them we were leaving and were about to go when Vlad halted.
Where's Leo?
He left. He got an important call.
Left? Sandra, a word.
When she approached us, Vlad leaned to her and said quietly,
I think you and Millie should go to your village. Have fun, visit your family, and stay there for the night so that you don't have to drive in the dark. Come back tomorrow morning.
But we only were there yesterday. Although I'm always happy to see my sister, and Millie loved it there, I guess it's a good idea to spend the night there.
Wonderful. Go right now while the sun hasn't set. Laya, explain it to your sister. I'm waiting for you in the car.
Vlad left, and I froze in hesitation. Why does he want for them to leave? He told us the castle was the safest place. As if answering my thoughts, wind howled mournfully in the mountains, and it started drizzling.
By the way, Laya, I've had a chat with the guy from the kitchen, Valentin. He assured me there are no children in the castle and there hadn't been for a long time.